Before we dive in, a quick and important disclaimer. The information provided in this video is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as financial or career advice. Salary data can change rapidly and varies based on countless factors. You should always conduct your own research and consult with professional advisors before making any career or financial decisions. What if I told you that there's a job in America right now where the starting salary can be over $130,000 a year? Not after 10 years of experience, not with a PhD from an Ivy League school, but a starting salary. And what if I told you that same job could scale to over $250,000 a year faster than almost any other career path in the country? You'd probably think it sounds too good to be true. A scam, a gimmick, or some ultra-niche role reserved for a handful of geniuses. But it's not. This is the reality for the cloud engineer. And in the next few minutes, we are going to pull back the curtain on the real numbers, the actual take-home pay, and the life-changing income potential of this single career. So let's get one thing straight. If you've typed cloud engineer salary into a search bar, you've been lied to. Not maliciously, but you've been given a blurry, out-of-focus picture that is practically useless. You see a big, juicy number, maybe $127,000, and you think, okay, cool. But what does that number actually mean? Is that for someone in San Francisco or someone in St. Louis? Is that for a person who knows AWS or Azure or Google Cloud? Does that include the $20,000 bonus they got? Is that for an entry-level position or for a seasoned veteran with a decade of experience? The average salary you see online is a statistical soup that mixes all of this together, creating a number that represents almost no one's actual experience. It's like averaging the temperature of Alaska and Florida and saying the average US temperature is a comfortable 65 degrees. It's technically true but utterly misleading. This video is the antidote to that confusion. We are going to dissect the cloud engineer salary in the United States piece by piece, so you walk away with a crystal clear understanding of your own earning potential. We're not dealing in averages, we're dealing in realities. We'll break down the salary you can expect at every single level. The brand new just got certified junior cloud engineer. The mid-level engineer who's starting to hit their stride. The senior and principal engineers who are architecting massive systems and cashing massive checks. We will pinpoint the exact impact of location, showing you the dollar-for-dollar difference between working in a tech hub like Austin, Texas versus a remote role from the mountains of Montana. We will compare the big three cloud providers, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, to see which one currently pays the biggest premium. And most importantly, we will reveal the specific skills, the niche specializations, and the high-value certifications that act as salary multipliers, allowing you to add tens of thousands of dollars to your annual income. This isn't just about data for me. It's about a fundamental shift I've seen happening in the American workforce. I've seen people go from feeling stuck in dead-end jobs, earning $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000 a year, to doubling or even tripling their income in under 2 years. Take the story of a guy we'll call Mark. Mark was a project manager for a construction company in Ohio, good at his job, but his salary had hit a ceiling. He was working 50-hour weeks, constantly stressed about budgets and deadlines, and his income just wasn't growing. He saw the world moving online, and he started hearing about the cloud. He didn't know what it was, but he was curious. He spent his nights and weekends, not for years, but for about 9 months, learning the fundamentals of AWS. He earned a couple of foundational certifications. He was terrified, felt like an imposter, and didn't think anyone in the high-tech world would take a construction guy seriously. His first job offer was for a junior cloud support role. The salary? $85,000. A $30,000 raise from his old job, just to get his foot in the door. He was ecstatic. But that's not the end of the story. After just 1 year of real-world experience, his skills were in high demand. Recruiters were flooding his LinkedIn inbox. His next role as a cloud engineer came with a salary of $140,000. In less than 24 months, Mark went from a capped-out career in construction to nearly tripling his income in the fastest-growing sector of technology. Mark's story isn't a one-in-a-million lottery ticket. It's becoming a repeatable, achievable blueprint. And the reason is simple: supply and demand. Think about it. Every single time you stream a movie on Netflix, order a pizza from the Domino's app, book a car with Uber, or join a Zoom call for work, you are using the cloud. Companies from Fortune 500 giants to the local dentist's office are racing to move their operations off of expensive, clunky, physical servers and into the flexible, powerful, and cost-effective ecosystem of the cloud. This isn't a trend, it's a mass migration. It's one of the largest technological shifts in human history. And who are the architects, the builders, and the mechanics of this new digital world? Cloud engineers. They are the ones who make it all work. They design the systems that can handle millions of users. They secure the data from hackers. They automate processes that save companies millions of dollars a year. The demand for these skills is absolutely white hot. But the supply of people who actually have these skills, it's nowhere close to meeting the demand. This massive gap is what creates the incredible salary leverage for anyone who can prove they know their stuff. You're not being paid just for your time. You're being paid for your ability to solve multi-million-dollar problems and unlock billion-dollar opportunities for businesses. So, as we go through these numbers, I want you to erase what you thought you knew about tech salaries. This isn't about just getting a small raise. This is about putting yourself in a position of power in the job market. It's about acquiring a skill set so valuable that companies will compete for you, not the other way around. Over the course of this deep dive, we're going to build a complete salary map for you. First, we'll establish our baseline by looking at the true entry-level salaries, what you can expect in your first 1 to 2 years in the field, fresh out of a certification program or a boot camp. Then we'll climb the ladder, exploring the lucrative world of mid-level and senior cloud roles, where six-figure base salaries are just the starting point of the conversation. We will dedicate a huge section to the tale of two cities, comparing the total compensation packages in high-cost-of-living areas like New York and Silicon Valley against up-and-coming tech hubs and fully remote positions. You'll be shocked to see how the numbers stack up. We'll also dive deep into specializations. A cloud DevOps engineer, a cloud security engineer, and a cloud data engineer might all have cloud engineer in their title, but their paychecks can look vastly different. We'll show you which specializations are commanding the biggest salaries right now. And finally, we'll cover the certifications that act like instant cash bonuses and the negotiation tactics to make sure you never leave money on the table. This is your ground truth guide to cloud engineer compensation in the United States. No fluff, no misleading averages, just the actionable real-world data you need to plan your career and maximize your income. So let's get started by tearing apart that fake national average and building our foundation from the ground up, starting with the number that matters most. The salary you can earn in your very first cloud job. Alright, let's cut right to the chase. You want the number. What is the rock bottom, foot in the door salary for a cloud engineer in the United States? Based on real-world data, not just aggregated website averages, that first job in cloud, the one that gets you started, typically pays between $75,000 and $110,000 a year. Now, for some of you, that number is incredibly exciting. For others, it might be a little lower than the hype you've heard. But hold on, because that range I just gave you is almost completely useless without understanding the single most important and most misunderstood concept in this entire industry. The term entry-level cloud job is one of the biggest lies in tech. It's a phrase that sets people up for failure, for frustration, and for quitting before they even begin. Because when most people hear entry-level, they think first job ever. They picture a recent college grad, or someone with zero professional experience, walking into a $90,000 cloud role. And while that can happen, it is extraordinarily rare. It is the exception that breaks the rule. The reality is this: an entry-level cloud job is almost never an entry-level technology job. Think about it like becoming a pilot. You don't just walk into the cockpit of a 747 on your first day. You start with a Cessna. You learn the fundamentals of flight, navigation, and safety on a smaller, less complex machine. In the world of technology, the help desk, a junior sysadmin role, or a network technician job, those asterisks are the Cessnas. They are the proving grounds where you learn the absolute, non-negotiable fundamentals. You learn how computers talk to each other on a network. You learn how operating systems work. You learn how to troubleshoot when everything is on fire and a manager is breathing down your neck. The cloud, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, that's the 747. It's bigger, it's more complex, and it's built on the assumption that you already know how to fly. So, when we talk about that first cloud salary, we are almost always talking about one of two distinct people, two paths that lead to the same destination. And you need to figure out which person you are right now, because it will completely change your strategy, your timeline, and your starting salary. Path number one is the upgrader. This is the most common path into the cloud. The upgrader is someone who already has a job in IT. They might be a Windows system administrator making $65,000 a year, managing physical servers in a dusty server room. They might be a network analyst making $70,000 configuring switches and routers. They could be a database administrator, a help desk lead, or even a software developer working on older on-premise applications. The upgrader has already put in their time in the Cessna. They know the fundamentals. They understand IP addresses, firewalls, user permissions, and how to read an error log. For them, the cloud isn't a brand new universe. It's just a new tool set. It's a more efficient, more powerful way to do the job they already understand. Instead of racking a physical server, they learn to spin up an EC2 instance. Instead of configuring a physical firewall, they learn to manage a security group in AWS. So, the upgrader studies for and passes a foundational cloud certification, like the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. They add a few small projects to their resume, maybe migrating a simple WordPress site to the cloud. And then they hit the job market. And because they have a foundation of 2, 3, or 5 years of general IT experience, companies see them as a safe bet. They aren't a total rookie. They have a proven track record. This person, the upgrader, is the one who lands squarely in the upper end of that initial salary range. It is very realistic for a sysadmin making $65,000 to jump to a junior cloud engineer role and start at $95,000, $100,000, or even $110,000. It's a massive pay bump, but it's a reward for the foundational knowledge they've already built. Their first cloud job titles will be things like Cloud Engineer, Associate Cloud Engineer, or Junior DevOps Engineer. They get to skip the absolute bottom rung of the ladder because they've already climbed it in a different department. But what if you're not the upgrader? What if you're coming from a completely different world? This is path number 2, the pioneer. The pioneer is a bartender, a truck driver, a marketing manager, a stay-at-home parent, or a recent high school graduate. They have zero professional IT experience. They are starting from absolute scratch. For the pioneer, the journey is different and it is harder. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you a fantasy. The pioneer has to learn everything at once. They have to learn the networking, the operating systems, and the cloud platform simultaneously. Their path requires immense discipline. They're not just getting one certification, they're probably getting 2 or 3. The CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus become their new best friends. Then they move on to an AWS or Azure certification. But more importantly, the pioneer cannot rely on work experience to get a job. So they have to create it. They build a home lab. They build a portfolio of projects on GitHub. They are not just learning. They are building, documenting, and proving their skills every single day. They create a cloud-hosted resume website, build a serverless function that automates a simple task, or set up a containerized application. They have to show, not just tell. When the pioneer finally hits the job market, they aren't typically applying for cloud engineer roles. Why? Because those roles, even if they say entry-level, are implicitly looking for the upgraders. Instead, the pioneer targets what I call cloud-adjacent roles. These are the true entry points. Job titles like Cloud Support Specialist, Technical Support Engineer at a cloud company, Cloud Operations Analyst, or an NOC technician for a company that heavily uses cloud infrastructure. In these roles, you are immersed in the cloud ecosystem. You're troubleshooting customer issues with their S3 buckets. You're monitoring cloud dashboards for alerts. You are on the front lines, learning the practical, real-world application of cloud services. You are, in effect, getting paid to build that foundational experience the upgrader already had. And because this is a true entry-level technology job, the salary is different. The pioneer is looking at a starting salary in the range of $60,000 to $85,000 a year. It's lower than what the upgrader gets, yes. But let's be clear. This is potentially a $60,000 a year job for someone who 6 months prior had no professional tech skills whatsoever. It is a life-changing launchpad. Now you'll notice something I haven't mentioned for either path. A 4-year computer science degree. Let me be crystal clear. For the vast majority of cloud infrastructure and operations roles, you do not need a CS degree. Companies are desperate for people with hands-on practical skills. They care far more about your AWS certification and your GitHub portfolio of projects than they do about your diploma. Your ability to solve a real-world problem is infinitely more valuable than your knowledge of theoretical algorithms. Don't let the lack of a degree hold you back. It is not the barrier it used to be. The barrier today is a lack of demonstrable skills. So let's recap the real numbers. Path 1, the upgrader with prior IT experience, is looking at $90,000 to $110,000 or more for their first dedicated cloud role. Path 2, the pioneer starting from scratch, is looking at $60,000 to $85,000 for a cloud-adjacent or support role. This is the ground floor. This is the reality. Forget the fake national average. Your starting point depends entirely on which of these two paths you are on. But here is the most exciting part. The secret that makes this entire industry so powerful. That initial $30,000 or $40,000 gap between the upgrader and the pioneer. It can completely disappear in 18 to 24 months. The playing field levels out with breathtaking speed. In fact, it is not uncommon for a highly motivated pioneer to actually overtake the upgrader in salary within 3 years. How? It all comes down to a series of specific strategic moves you make in that very first job. It's about the skills you choose to learn, the projects you volunteer for, and how you leverage that initial experience into your first major promotion or job hop. That first job isn't the destination. It's the launchpad for your first six-figure salary. And that's exactly what we're going to break down next. The step-by-step playbook to go from entry-level to $150,000 faster than you ever thought possible. Alright, let's build this playbook. The first thing you need to understand is that you can't build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. The cloud, for all its magic and abstraction, is built on decades of fundamental technology. And if you skip this foundation, you will eventually hit a wall. Hard. You'll be the person who can click buttons in the AWS console, but has no idea why the application isn't working. You'll be stuck and your salary will be too. So, phase 1 of our playbook is called the bedrock. We're not even touching the cloud yet. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but trust me on this. This is the secret sauce that separates the $100,000 engineers from the $200,000 architects. First, you need to get comfortable with Linux. I'm not saying you need to be a gray-bearded system administrator who compiles their own kernel. But you absolutely need to understand the command line. You need to know how to navigate the file system, manage permissions, install software, and check running processes. Why? Because the vast majority of servers running in the cloud, the virtual machines on AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, are running some flavor of Linux. It is the engine under the hood of the internet. Trying to be a cloud engineer without knowing Linux is like trying to be a race car driver without knowing what a piston is. You might be able to steer, but when something goes wrong, you are completely lost. Second, you need to grasp the fundamentals of networking. This is the topic that makes most beginners' eyes glaze over, but it is non-negotiable. You have to understand what an IP address is, the difference between TCP and UDP, what a subnet is, how a firewall works, and what DNS does. Think of it like this. The cloud is a global city of data centers. Networking is the entire road system, the streets, the highways, the traffic lights, and the address of every single building. If you don't understand how traffic flows, how can you possibly design a system that is fast, reliable, and secure? You can't. You'll be creating digital traffic jams and leaving the front door of your virtual mansion wide open for hackers. Third, you need to pick up a scripting language. My recommendation, and the industry standard right now, is Python. Again, you don't need to become a software developer who builds complex applications from scratch. You need to learn Python from the perspective of an operations and infrastructure person. Your goal is to learn how to write scripts that automate repetitive tasks. How to use code to create 100 virtual servers instead of clicking a button 100 times. How to write a small function that automatically resizes an image whenever it's uploaded to a storage bucket. This is the essence of infrastructure as code, a concept that is absolutely central to modern cloud engineering. Automation is the superpower of a cloud engineer. It's what allows you to manage an army of servers with a few lines of code. It's the ultimate force multiplier for your skills and, consequently, your salary. Linux, networking, Python. That's the bedrock. Spend a month, spend 2 months, whatever it takes to get comfortable with these 3 pillars. Don't just read about them. Get your hands dirty. Install Linux on an old laptop or in a virtual machine. Build a simple home network. Write small Python scripts that rename files or pull data from a weather API. This hands-on experience is what turns abstract knowledge into concrete skill. Now, once that bedrock is set, we can finally start looking up at the clouds. And you're going to see 3 massive clouds dominating the sky: Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. This is where beginners make their first critical mistake. They try to learn all 3 at once. They dabble in AWS, watch a few videos on Azure, and read an article about GCP. This is a recipe for disaster. Think of these platforms like learning a language. You wouldn't try to learn Spanish, French, and Mandarin all at the same time, would you? You'd get confused, mix up the grammar, and end up fluent in none of them. The same is true for the cloud. You need to pick one and only one to start with. Go deep. Immerse yourself in it. Learn its vocabulary, its nuances, its culture. Which one should you pick? Honestly, for your first job, it doesn't matter as much as you think. The concepts are largely transferable. Learning how AWS handles virtual networking makes it 10 times easier to understand how Azure does it. For the sake of a concrete path, let's focus on the market leader, AWS. It has the largest market share, the most job postings, and an incredible amount of free training material available. So you've picked your cloud. Now we enter phase 2 of the playbook, the first ascent. This is where we talk about certifications. And I need to be crystal clear about this because there is a dangerous myth circulating out there. The myth is that a certification is a golden ticket to a six-figure job. That is false. A certification by itself is almost worthless. Let me say that again. The piece of paper, the digital badge on your LinkedIn profile, is not what gets you hired. What gets you hired is the knowledge you were supposed to have gained while studying for that certification. The certification is simply a standardized signal to a hiring manager that you, theoretically, possess a certain baseline of knowledge. It gets your resume past the initial HR filter. It's the key that gets you to the door of the interview room, but it does not open the door. Your actual knowledge and ability to solve problems is what opens the door. Too many people chase the certification. They cram using practice exams, memorize answers, and barely scrape by with a pass. They have the certificate, but they don't have the knowledge. And they get destroyed in technical interviews. They can't answer basic questions. They can't solve simple problems. Don't be that person. Your goal is not to pass the test. Your goal is to master the material. The test is just a final checkpoint to validate your understanding. So where do you start? You start at the very beginning with the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. Think of this certification as a driver's permit. Proves you know the basic rules of the road. You know what a stop sign means, you know the difference between a school zone and a highway. It shows you understand the core concepts of the cloud. What is IaaS, PaaS, SaaS? What is the value proposition of AWS? What are the core services like EC2 for compute, S3 for storage, and VPC for networking? This certification is not deeply technical. You will not be building complex systems to pass this exam, but it is fundamentally important. It gives you the vocabulary to speak the language of the cloud. It ensures you understand the big picture before you get lost in the weeds of the more advanced, specialized certifications. It's the orientation day for your entire cloud career. So, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to dedicate yourself to mastering the material for the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner. Use the free training on AWS' own site. Find a high-quality course online. But most importantly, as you learn about a service like S3, don't just read about it. Log into the free AWS account you're going to create and actually use it. Upload a file. Create a bucket. Set a permission policy. Turn that theoretical knowledge into muscle memory. This is the path. We've laid the bedrock with Linux, networking, and Python. We've chosen our mountain to climb, AWS, and we've identified our first base camp, the Cloud Practitioner certification. You now have a clear, actionable plan to gain the foundational knowledge required. But here's the million-dollar question, the one that stops so many aspiring engineers in their tracks. This is all just knowledge. How do I get experience when every single job posting, even for entry-level roles, asks for 2 or 3 years of experience? It's the classic chicken and egg problem, and it feels like an impossible wall to climb. But it's not. There is a way to manufacture your own experience. A way to build a portfolio that speaks louder than any resume. And that's the bridge from a theoretical $100,000 to a tangible job offer. That's precisely what we're going to build next. So let's talk about the single biggest lie in tech recruiting, the experience paradox. You can't get a job without experience, but you can't get experience without a job. Feels like a locked door and the key is on the other side. But what if I told you the door was never locked? What if the key was in your pocket the entire time? The key isn't a job. The key is a project. Not a tutorial project you followed on YouTube. Not another to-do list app. I'm talking about a capstone project. A project so comprehensive, so reflective of real-world work, that it becomes your experience. It becomes the story you tell in every interview. Let's create a character. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah just got her AWS Solutions Architect Associate certification. She's smart, she's motivated, she spent months studying. Her resume lists the cert, her skills in EC2, S3, and VPCs, and a link to her GitHub. In that GitHub are 5 small projects she followed along with in a course. She's applied to 150 junior cloud engineer jobs. She's heard back from 3. All rejections. Sarah's stuck in the paradox. Now let's give Sarah the key. We're going to have her build one single project. But this project is a Trojan horse. It looks like a personal project on the outside, but on the inside, it's packed with the exact skills and experiences hiring managers are desperately looking for. What is the project? We'll call it Cloudfolio. It's a dynamic, serverless, personal portfolio website. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. The magic isn't in what it is, but how it's built and operated. This is where you manufacture experience. Step 1. Infrastructure as code. Sarah isn't going into the AWS console and clicking buttons to create her resources. That's what beginners do. Professionals automate. So, Sarah's going to define her entire website's infrastructure, the S3 bucket for hosting, the CloudFront distribution for a global CDN, the Route 53 DNS records, the SSL certificate, all of it in code. She's going to use Terraform. Why? Because when a hiring manager sees Terraform on a resume, they don't just see a keyword. They see someone who understands that manual configuration is slow, error-prone, and doesn't scale. They see an engineer who thinks in terms of templates and automation, not one-off tasks. By writing the Terraform code for her own website, Sarah can now go into an interview, and when they ask, "Do you have experience with infrastructure as code?" she doesn't say, "Yes, I've read about it." She says, "Absolutely. For my portfolio project, I use Terraform to provision and manage the entire AWS infrastructure. I created modules for my S3 buckets and CloudFront distributions to make the code reusable and maintainable. This allowed me to spin up an identical test environment in minutes, ensuring consistency and reducing the risk of manual configuration errors." Who are you hiring? The person who read the book or Sarah? Step 2. The CI/CD pipeline. Sarah's website code lives in a GitHub repository, but she's not going to manually upload her files every time she makes a change. That's amateur hour. She's going to build a CI/CD pipeline, a continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline, using GitHub Actions. Here's how it works. When Sarah pushes a new change to her code, maybe she updates her resume or adds a new project, GitHub Actions automatically kicks in. It runs tests to make sure she didn't break anything. It lints her code for quality, and if everything passes, it automatically deploys the new version of her website to AWS. Zero manual intervention. Why is this a game changer? Because this is how every modern tech company on the planet operates. They live and breathe CI/CD. When the interviewer asks, "Tell me about your experience with DevOps principles," Sarah doesn't freeze. She leans in. She says, "My entire portfolio is deployed via a CI/CD pipeline I built with GitHub Actions. The pipeline automates testing, validation, and deployment. For example, I implemented a workflow that on every code push, automatically invalidates the CloudFront cache to ensure users see the latest content immediately. This system reduced my deployment time from 15 minutes of manual steps to under 60 seconds of automated, hands-off execution." She's not just talking about a skill. She's telling a story of a problem she solved with that skill. That's experience. Step 3. Adding dynamic functionality with serverless. A static website is fine, but we're building a masterpiece. Let's add a feature, a visitor counter, or maybe a contact form that sends you an email without needing a back-end server. We're going to do this with serverless technology, specifically AWS Lambda and API Gateway. Sarah's going to write a simple Python function, a Lambda function, that gets triggered every time someone visits her site. This function will interact with a database, a NoSQL database like DynamoDB, to increment a counter. API Gateway will provide the public endpoint that her website's code can call. Suddenly, Sarah is no longer just an infrastructure person. She's a full-stack cloud engineer. She understands how compute, databases, and networking interact in a modern event-driven architecture. So when the interview question is, "Have you worked with serverless technologies?" she can say, "Yes, extensively. My portfolio's contact form is powered by a serverless backend using API Gateway and AWS Lambda. I wrote the Lambda function in Python, and it integrates with Amazon's simple email service to send me notifications." I also configured IAM roles with least privilege permissions to ensure the function could only access the specific resources it needed, which is a critical security best practice. Do you hear that? She's talking about architecture, code, and security in a single confident answer, all backed by a project they can go look at. Step 4. Cost management and monitoring. A cloud engineer who doesn't understand cost is a liability. So Sarah's going to take it one step further. She's going to set up AWS budgets to alert her if her costs are projected to exceed, say, $5 a month. She's going to set up a CloudWatch dashboard to monitor the health of her website, tracking things like the number of visitors, API latency, and any errors from her Lambda function. This is the knockout punch. It shows foresight and business acumen. When the hiring manager asks, "How do you ensure your cloud solutions are cost-effective?" Sarah has her story ready. "I'm very conscious of cost optimization. For my own project, I implemented AWS budgets with SNS topic alerts to prevent cost overruns. I also chose a serverless architecture specifically because it's pay-per-use, which is incredibly cost-effective for workloads with variable traffic. My CloudWatch dashboard gives me real-time visibility into performance metrics, allowing me to proactively identify and address issues before they impact users." Look what just happened. Sarah went from having a certification and some tutorial-level knowledge to having a living, breathing project that is a microcosm of a professional cloud environment. She didn't just learn about Terraform. She used it to manage her infrastructure. She didn't just read about CI/CD. She built a pipeline that automates her deployments. She didn't just study serverless. She architected a serverless backend. She didn't just hear about cost optimization. She actively monitored and managed her own budget. This one project, Cloudfolio, has become her work experience. It's the answer to almost every technical and behavioral interview question. Tell me about a time you solved a difficult problem. She can talk about debugging her Terraform state file. Tell me about a project you're proud of. She can walk them through the entire architecture of Cloudfolio, from code commit to global deployment. What have you learned recently? She can talk about implementing a new feature in her Lambda function, the 150 applications that got her nowhere. That was Sarah 1.0. Sarah 2.0, the one with the Cloudfolio project, updates her resume. She doesn't just list AWS. She writes, "Designed and deployed a serverless personal portfolio on AWS, leveraging Terraform for infrastructure automation, GitHub Actions for CI/CD, and Lambda for dynamic backend functionality, resulting in a 99.9% uptime and zero-touch deployments." That resume doesn't go into the trash. That resume gets a phone call. That resume gets an interview. And in that interview, Sarah isn't just a candidate who knows the definitions. She's an engineer who has built something real. The confidence she has is different. The way she talks is different. Because she's not reciting facts. She's recounting her experience. This is how you break the paradox. You don't wait for permission to get experience. You create it. You build one single killer project that showcases the exact skills companies are paying six figures for. You turn theory into practice. And in doing so, you turn a resume that gets ignored into one that gets offers. But building the project is only half the battle. A brilliant project that isn't communicated properly on your resume might as well not exist. It's like building a supercar and then hiding it under a tarp in your garage. So, how do you take this incredible project experience and translate it into a resume that sails past the automated filters and captures the immediate attention of a human recruiter in under 6 seconds? That's the art and science of resume crafting, and that's exactly where we're going next. The single most important thing to understand about your resume is that it is not a historical document. It is a marketing document. Its only job is to sell one product, you, for one specific position. And it has to do that job in about 6 seconds. That's the average time a recruiter spends on their first glance. 6 seconds to decide if you're worth a closer look or if you're getting tossed into the no pile. So, how do you make every single one of those seconds count? First, you have to get past the gatekeeper. And I'm not talking about a human. I'm talking about the applicant tracking system, or ATS. Think of it as a robotic bouncer at the front door of the club. Over 90% of large companies use these systems to scan resumes and filter out candidates before a human being ever sees them. This robot doesn't care about your beautiful design or your fancy fonts. It's a machine looking for keywords and a specific structure. If your resume isn't formatted in a way the ATS can read, or if it's missing the right keywords from the job description, you are invisible. You could be the most qualified cloud engineer on the planet, but if the robot can't parse your resume, your application is dead on arrival. So the first rule is, keep it clean. Use a standard simple format. A single column is best. Avoid tables, graphics, and weird fonts. The robot gets confused easily. Second, you must tailor your resume for every single job you apply for. I know it's a pain, but it's non-negotiable. Go through the job description and identify the key skills and technologies they're asking for. AWS, Azure, Terraform, Kubernetes, Python, CI/CD, Jenkins. These are your keywords. Now you need to strategically weave these exact keywords into your resume, especially in your skills and experience sections. Don't just stuff them in a list at the bottom. The system is smarter than that. It looks for context. A resume that mentions Terraform in the context of a project where you provision infrastructure is infinitely more powerful than one that just lists Terraform in a skills cloud. Okay, so you've optimized for the robot. Now you have to win over the human in 6 seconds. This is where the art comes in. Your resume needs to scream, I solve problems and I create value. Let's break it down section by section. At the very top, your name and contact info. Simple enough. But right below that is your headline. This is not the place for objective. To obtain a challenging role, no one cares about your objective. They care about their objective, which is to fill a role. Your headline should be your professional title. Something like AWS Certified Cloud Engineer or Senior DevOps Engineer Kubernetes and IAC Specialist. It immediately tells the recruiter who you are and what you do. Next, the summary. This is your 30-second elevator pitch in written form. 3 to 4 lines max. This is the most valuable real estate on the entire page. It needs to be a knockout. A bad summary sounds like this. Motivated and results-oriented professional with experience in cloud computing, seeking to leverage my skills in a dynamic environment. It's just a string of meaningless buzzwords. Says nothing. A killer summary sounds like this. AWS Certified Solutions Architect with 5+ years of experience designing, deploying, and automating resilient, cost-efficient cloud infrastructure. Proven expertise in reducing cloud spend by over 30% through infrastructure as code and FinOps strategies. Passionate about building scalable systems that drive business growth. See the difference? The second one is packed with value. It has keywords like AWS infrastructure as code. It has a quantifiable achievement, reducing costs by 30%. It shows not just what you do, but the impact of what you do. After the summary comes your skills section. This is your technical arsenal. Don't just throw a bunch of words in a paragraph. Organize them. Create categories. Cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, GCP, infrastructure as code, Terraform, CloudFormation, CI/CD tools, Jenkins, GitLab CI, Circle CI, containers and orchestration, Docker, Kubernetes, scripting languages, Python, Bash, PowerShell. This shows the recruiter at a glance the breadth and depth of your technical capabilities. It also shows you're an organized thinker. Now we get to the heart of it all, the experience section. This is where you tell your story. And every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The biggest mistake people make here is simply listing their job duties. They write things like managed EC2 instances, wrote Terraform scripts, monitored system performance. This is boring. It's passive. It tells the recruiter what you were assigned to do, not what you achieved. You need to reframe every single bullet point to focus on results and impact. The best way to do this is using the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. Or even a simplified version, problem, action, result. For every bullet point, you should answer the question, what was the problem, what did I do about it, and what was the positive outcome? And most importantly, you need to quantify that outcome whenever possible. Use numbers. Numbers are the language of business. They cut through the noise and prove your value. Let's transform those boring bullet points. Instead of managed EC2 instances, how about this? Engineered and implemented an EC2 instance scheduler using Lambda and CloudWatch, reducing costs for non-production environments by 70%, saving an estimated $200,000 annually. Boom! That's a story. It shows you identified a problem, wasted money, took action, built an automation solution, and achieved a massive quantifiable result. Instead of wrote Terraform scripts, try this. Led the migration of legacy infrastructure to a fully automated environment using Terraform, reducing manual provisioning time from 2 days to 15 minutes and eliminating human error by 99%. This shows initiative, technical skill, and a direct impact on efficiency and reliability. Instead of monitored system performance, what about developed and implemented a proactive monitoring and alerting system using Prometheus and Grafana, which decreased system downtime by 40% and improved incident response time from 30 minutes to under 5 minutes. This demonstrates that you don't just watch things. You build systems that make things better. See how that works. Every bullet point becomes a mini case study of you being a hero. You are the person who saves money, saves time, reduces risk, and improves performance. That's the person they want to hire. Aim for 3 to 5 of these powerful quantified bullet points for each relevant role. What if you're new to the field? Maybe you're a career changer and don't have formal experience. This is where the project section becomes your secret weapon. It's your chance to prove you can do the work, even if no one has paid you to do it yet. Don't just list Cloud Resume Challenge. Describe it like a real-world job. For example, deployed a serverless dynamic resume website on AWS. Architected a CI/CD pipeline with GitHub Actions to automate testing and deployment. Utilized infrastructure as code with AWS SAM to provision a Lambda function, API gateway, and DynamoDB database, resulting in a highly available, scalable, and low-cost solution. Link to your GitHub repository for the project. Let them see your code. Let them see your thought process in the README file. A well-documented project on GitHub is more valuable than a vague bullet point from a job you had 5 years ago. This is tangible proof of your skills. Finally, your education and certifications. Keep it brief. If you have a college degree, list it. But in the world of cloud, certifications are king. They are a powerful signal to recruiters that you have validated knowledge. Don't bury them at the bottom. Make them prominent. List them right under your summary, or even in your headline. AWS Certified Solutions Architect Professional, Certified Kubernetes Administrator, CKA. These are instant credibility boosters. The final product should be a clean, concise, one-page document. For 99% of people, even those with 15 years of experience, one page is enough. It forces you to be ruthless, to cut out the fluff, and to focus only on the information that sells you for that specific role. Your resume is your trailer for the movie that is your career. It needs to be fast-paced, full of highlights, and leave the audience, the recruiter, desperate to see the full feature. It needs to make them pick up the phone and say, "We need to talk to this person." And when they make that call, that's when you get the chance to talk numbers. Not just the technical specs of a system, but the salary numbers that will change your life. But getting that call is impossible without a resume that works for you, not against you. Now, once you've landed that interview, how do you navigate the technical deep dive and the behavioral questions to prove you're worth top dollar? That's a whole different battlefield. And on this battlefield, there are 2 major fronts you have to win: the technical gauntlet and what I call the behavioral inquisition. Most engineers obsess over the first and completely fumble the second, and that's precisely where 6-figure opportunities evaporate into thin air. Let's start with the technical gauntlet. The biggest mistake I see people make is treating it like a college exam. They spend weeks cramming, memorizing the specific API calls for an AWS service, or the exact syntax for a Terraform module. They walk in ready to regurgitate documentation, and the interviewer sees right through it. A senior engineer, a principal architect, the person who is going to approve your $200,000 plus salary, doesn't care if you have the AWS CLI flags memorized. They can look that up. You can look that up. What they cannot look up is your judgment, your ability to reason through a problem. So you need to reframe the entire encounter. This is not an exam. This is a consulting session. You are the highly paid expert they've brought in for an hour to solve a problem. They're not just testing your knowledge, they're testing your thought process. They want to see how you think. Let's take a classic system design question. Design a scalable, resilient photo sharing service, like a simplified Instagram. The junior engineer, the one who gets the average salary, starts listing services. Okay, I'll use S3 for photo storage, an EC2 instance for the web server, and an RDS database for the user data. It's not wrong, but it's a C- answer. It shows you know the names of the products, and that's about it. The 6-figure engineer, the one who gets a top-tier offer, does something completely different. They start by asking questions. They become the consultant. Great question. Before I architect a solution, can I clarify a few things? What are our primary goals? Are we optimizing for low latency, high availability, or low cost? What's our expected user load? 1,000 users? 100 million? Are we dealing with just photos or videos as well? What kind of metadata are we storing with each photo? You see the difference? You just took control of the conversation. You're demonstrating that you don't just build things, you build the right things based on business requirements. This is the language of leadership. Now, you start architecting, but you explain the why behind every single choice. You don't just say, I'll use S3. You say, for storing the actual image files, I choose Amazon S3. My reasoning is it's 11 nines of durability, meaning it's virtually impossible to lose a photo. It's also incredibly cost-effective for object storage at scale and integrates seamlessly with the CDN. The alternative, storing images on an EBS volume attached to an EC2 instance, would be a critical mistake because it creates a single point of failure and is far more expensive and difficult to scale. You don't just say EC2 for the web server. You say, for the front-end application logic, I'd start with an auto-scaling group of EC2 instances behind an application load balancer. This gives us both scalability to handle traffic spikes and resilience, because if one instance fails, the load balancer simply routes traffic to the healthy ones. As we grow, we could even evaluate containerizing this with ECS or EKS for better resource utilization, or even explore a serverless approach with Lambda if the request patterns fit. But for now, this provides a robust and well-understood foundation. You're not just listing services, you're explaining trade-offs. You're showing them you understand the second and third-order consequences of your decisions. You're demonstrating that you think about cost, scalability, and resilience. This is the conversation that justifies a massive salary. Because you're not just a coder, you're an architect. You're a business partner who uses technology to solve problems. This is the key to crushing the technical interview. Don't just show them what you know. Show them how you think. It's the difference between being seen as a pair of hands to be managed and a mind to be invested in. Now, for the second front, the one that's arguably even more important for your salary, the behavioral inquisition. This is where they decide if they actually want you on their team. You can be the most brilliant technical mind in the world, but if you come across as arrogant, difficult to work with, or someone who blames others, you're not getting the offer. The questions sound simple. Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. Describe a project that failed. Tell me about a time you had to deal with an ambiguous situation. These are not simple questions. They are carefully calibrated personality tests designed to reveal your core character traits: ownership, curiosity, bias for action, and humility. Your salary isn't just tied to your technical skills. It's tied to the perceived value of these traits. Everyone knows about the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. It's a decent framework, but it's just the skeleton. Most people use it to deliver dry, robotic answers. To command a top salary, you need to be a storyteller. You need to wrap that skeleton in muscle and skin and bring it to life. Let's take the classic. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. The average answer: well, one time I pushed a bad piece of code to production. Caused a bug. My task was to fix it. So I wrote a patch, tested it, and deployed the fix. The result is that the bug was gone. That's a terrible answer. It's technically a STAR answer, but it tells me nothing except that you write bugs. It shows no ownership, no learning, nothing. Here's how a future $250,000 a year cloud engineer answers that question. About a year ago, I was leading a project to migrate one of our legacy data pipelines to a new serverless architecture using AWS Lambda and Kinesis. I was really excited about the potential for cost savings and performance gains. In my haste to show progress, I made a critical assumption about the data format coming from one of the older upstream systems. I designed and built our new processing functions based on this flawed assumption. The situation became critical when we switched over. The pipeline immediately started failing, data was being corrupted, and it was causing incorrect reports for our finance department. It was 100% my fault. My ownership. My task was twofold. First, immediate triage to stop the bleeding and restore service. Second, to understand the root cause and ensure this never happened again. My immediate action was to roll back to the old system, which I was able to do in under 15 minutes because we had planned for that contingency. I then communicated transparently with all stakeholders, including the finance team, explaining what had happened, that it was my mistake, and that I was taking full ownership of the fix. I didn't sugarcoat it. Then I worked through the night, not just to correct the code, but to build a new data validation schema and a suite of automated integration tests that would have caught my bad assumption before it ever reached production. The result? The next day, we deployed the corrected pipeline, and it worked flawlessly. But the real result, the one I'm most proud of, is what happened next. The validation framework I built as a result of my mistake was adopted by 3 other teams in our organization, preventing an entire class of similar errors from ever occurring. I turned my personal failure into an organizational win. It was a humbling lesson in the importance of slowing down to move fast and never sacrificing diligence for speed. Do you feel the difference? That's not just an answer. That's a story. A story of ownership, resilience, humility, and turning a negative into a massive positive. You didn't just fix a bug. You improved the entire organization. You're not a liability. You're an asset who learns from mistakes and makes the whole team better. That is the person they want to give a mountain of money to. Every single behavioral question is an opportunity to tell a story that highlights one of these high-value traits. Prepare your stories. Rehearse them. Know the key moments in your career. Your biggest success, your toughest failure, your most challenging conflict, and frame them as compelling narratives of growth. So you've aced the technical, you've mastered the behavioral. You're in. The offer lands in your inbox. But the number isn't what you expected. This is where most engineers leave tens of thousands of dollars on the table. The negotiation game is about to begin, and it has its own set of rules. The first number you see is almost never the company's best number. It's the starting point of a conversation. Feeler. Think of it like a high-stakes poker match where the company just made the opening bet. They're testing your confidence. They're seeing if you'll fold immediately and take what's on the table, or if you know the value of your hand. Accepting that first offer is like folding with the royal flush in your pocket. You're leaving a massive pot on the table simply because you were too afraid to play the game. So what's the first rule of this game? You never, ever state your salary expectations first. The recruiter will ask. It's one of the first questions in their playbook. So what are you currently making? Or what kind of salary are you targeting for this role? This is a trap. It's a beautifully simple, incredibly effective trap. If you give a number, you've just set your own ceiling. If you say you're looking for $150,000, and they were prepared to go up to $190,000, you just lost $40,000 a year with 5 words. You will never see that extra $40,000. They will smile, say, "Oh, that's well within our budget," and offer you $155,000 to make you feel like you got a little win. So when they ask, you deflect. Gracefully but firmly. You say something like, "I'm really focused on finding the right role and team first, and I'm confident that if we both agree this is a great fit, we can come to a competitive and fair compensation package." Or, "I'd prefer to understand the full scope of the role, the responsibilities, and the total compensation structure before discussing specific numbers." You turn the question around. You are not a number. You are a solution to their problem, and you want to be valued as such after they've understood the value you bring. Once they extend that first offer, the real work begins. Your first move isn't to reply to the email. It's to go to war. A war for information. Your greatest weapon in any negotiation is data. Not feelings, not what you think you deserve, but cold, hard data. Your mission is to find out your true market value. This isn't a guess. It's a research project. You immediately go to Levels.fyi. This is the holy grail for tech salaries. You filter by company, by role, cloud engineer, SRE, DevOps engineer, by level, and by location. You look at dozens, even hundreds of data points. You're not looking for the average. You're looking for the range. What is the 75th percentile? What is the 90th percentile? You need to find the data points that match your specific experience. If you have deep expertise in Kubernetes, serverless, and Terraform, you are not the same as a generic cloud engineer. You command a premium. Next, you hit Glassdoor and LinkedIn salary. You cross-reference the data. You're building a dossier, a case file. You're looking for patterns. Is the company known for high base salaries but low stock grants? Or is it the other way around? Then you activate your network. You talk to people. You go on Blind, the anonymous professional network, and you ask, "Got an offer from Company X for an L5 cloud engineer in Austin. They're offering $160K base, $80K stock over 4 years. Is this a lowball?" The anonymous community will be brutally honest. They will tell you if you're getting fleeced. This is crucial insider information you cannot get anywhere else. By the end of this process, which might take a day or two, you should have a number. Not the number you want, but the number the market says you are worth. a defensible number, backed by evidence. Let's say the initial offer was a $160K base salary, but your research shows that for your level, skills, and location, the market rate is closer to $185K. Now you have your target. Now you craft the counteroffer. This is an art form. You don't just email back, "I want more money." That's amateur hour. You frame it as a collaborative discussion. You start with gratitude and excitement. "Thank you so much for the offer. I'm incredibly excited about the opportunity to work on the cloud platform team and contribute to," mention a specific project you discussed. "I truly believe my skills," and mention 1 to 2 key skills, "will bring a lot of value." Then you make your case. "Based on my conversations with the team and my understanding of the role's impact, I was expecting the compensation to be more aligned with the current market rate for a senior engineer with my expertise. My research, looking at data from Levels.fyi and other sources for similar roles in the Bay Area, indicates a base salary range of $180 to $195K. Considering my experience in multi-cloud orchestration and cost optimization, would it be possible to bring the base salary to $190K? Look at what you just did. You didn't make it about your feelings. You made it about market data. You anchored high, asking for $190K to hopefully land around $185K. You reminded them of your specific value. You were polite, professional, and firm. You've presented a logical argument that the hiring manager can take to their finance department. You've given your recruiter, who often wants to get you a better offer to secure their commission, the ammunition they need to fight for you internally. But what if you want to bring out the big guns? The single most powerful tool in a salary negotiation is a competing offer. Nothing changes the dynamic faster. With a competing offer, you are no longer asking for more money. You are making a business decision between two companies who are vying for your talent. You are a scarce, valuable resource, and the price is being set by the market in real time. This is why, if you're serious about maximizing your income, you should try to time your interview processes to conclude around the same time. Getting that second offer, even from a company you're less excited about, is the ultimate leverage. When you have that second offer in hand, the conversation changes. You can go back to your number one choice and say, "As I mentioned, I'm very excited about your company. However, I've also received another offer from Company Y for a total compensation of $250K. You are my preferred choice and I'd love to work with you. Is there anything you can do to match or get closer to that number?" You've just put all the pressure back on them. You were polite, you stated your preference for them, but you also drew a clear line in the sand backed by a real alternative. This is negotiation at the highest level. And remember, it's not just about the base salary. That's a rookie mistake. You're negotiating the total compensation package. This has 4 main levers: base salary, annual bonus, sign-on bonus, and equity, which usually comes in the form of restricted stock units, or RSUs. Let's break it down. Base salary is your predictable, guaranteed income. This is what you should try to maximize first, as it affects all future raises and bonuses. The annual bonus is often a percentage of your base. Sometimes this percentage is negotiable. You can ask, is the 15% target bonus standard for this level? Or is there any flexibility? Equity, the RSUs, is where fortunes are made in tech. This is a grant of company stock that vests over a period, typically 4 years with a 1-year cliff. That means you get 25% of your stock grant after your first year, and then the rest vests monthly or quarterly. You can absolutely negotiate this. You can ask for a larger initial grant. An extra $50,000 in stock at a company that grows 5x over the next 4 years is $250,000. And finally, the sign-on bonus. This is a one-time cash payment to get you in the door. It's often the most flexible lever for a company. If they tell you, "I'm sorry, we can't move any more on the base salary, the band for this level is capped at $185K," your next question should be, "I understand. In that case, would it be possible to provide a sign-on bonus to help bridge the gap?" Companies use sign-on bonuses to close a deal without messing up their internal salary structures. A $20,000, $30,000, even $50,000 sign-on bonus is not uncommon for senior roles, especially if you're walking away from an end-of-year bonus at your old job. You've armed yourself with data. You've crafted a compelling logical argument. You've leveraged a competing offer and explored every single lever of the compensation package. You've been polite, firm, and professional. You hit send on that counteroffer email, and now you wait. The silence is deafening. The recruiter, who was so responsive before, goes quiet for a day. Then 2. Your mind starts to race. Did you ask for too much? Did you offend them? Are they going to rescind the offer? That fear, that doubt, is the final test of the negotiation game. And how the company responds next will tell you everything you need to know. They're going to come back in one of 3 ways. Scenario 1, the dream scenario, they just say yes. The recruiter calls back, maybe a day later, and says, "Good news. We got it approved. We're happy to extend the offer at $165,000. I'll send over the updated paperwork now." And in that moment, a wave of relief washes over you. You did it. You advocated for yourself, you stood your ground, and you won. The key here is to be gracious. Thank them profusely, express your excitement, and this is critical, say nothing else until you have that new offer letter in your inbox. Celebrate privately, but stay professional until the ink is dry. Scenario 2, the most common scenario, they meet you in the middle. The recruiter calls and says, "Hey, so I took your number back to the team. We couldn't quite get to 165, but we were able to move our initial offer up to 158. We think this is a really strong, competitive offer, and we're excited about the possibility of you joining. This is not a loss. This is a win. You just made an extra $8,000 per year for sending a single well-crafted email. This is the negotiation dance. Now you have a choice. You can accept this new number, which is perfectly fine. Or you could make one final gentle push. You could say something like, "Thank you so much for working on this. I really appreciate you going to bat for me. 158 is a fantastic offer. If you could get it to an even 160, I can sign the paperwork a minute after you send it over." This puts the ball back in their court with a very small, very reasonable ask. It signals you're ready to close the deal. Sometimes they'll do it just to make the number clean and get the deal done. Sometimes they'll say no. Which brings us to scenario 3. They hold firm. The recruiter comes back and says, "I appreciate you sharing your expectations. Unfortunately, 150 is the absolute max we have budgeted for this role at this level. This is our best and final offer." Your heart might sink a little, but listen closely. This is not a personal rejection. They are not rescinding the offer. They are not mad at you. In fact, a professional company will respect you more for having asked. All they've done is give you a piece of information. The negotiation on base salary is over. And that's okay, because the base salary is only the beginning. It's the headline number, the one everyone talks about. But the real wealth, the career-changing money in cloud engineering, is hidden in the other lines of the offer letter. This is where amateurs stop negotiating, but where professionals go to work. Let's talk about the sign-on bonus. This is the single easiest thing to ask for when a company says they can't budge on base salary. A base salary increase is a recurring cost. It impacts their budget every single year you work there, and it compounds with every future raise you get. It's an annuity. A sign-on bonus, however, is a one-time expense. It's a completely different bucket of money for them. It's a tool they use to close a candidate they really want without messing up their internal salary bands. So when they say, 150 is our max, your immediate follow-up should be, "I understand completely, and I respect the budget constraints. Given that the base is firm, would you be open to a sign-on bonus to help bridge the gap to my target compensation?" You don't even have to name a number at first. Just open the door. They might come back and offer $5,000 or $10,000. For a senior role, it's not uncommon to negotiate a sign-on bonus of $20,000, $30,000, even $50,000 or more, especially if you're walking away from an end-of-year bonus at your current job. It's free money you get just for asking. Next up is the performance bonus. This is usually expressed as a percentage of your base salary. They might say, "You are eligible for a target bonus of 15%. The key word there is target. It's not guaranteed. You need to ask the clarifying questions. Is this bonus based on my individual performance, my team's performance, or the overall company's performance? How often has the company paid out this bonus at or above target over the last 3 years? If a company has a history of paying out 120% of the target bonus year after year, that 15% target is a very real part of your compensation. If they have a history of missing their numbers and paying out 50% of the target, you need to mentally adjust your total compensation downwards. A 15% target bonus on a $150,000 salary is $22,500. That's a significant chunk of change. Don't just gloss over it. But now we get to the big one, the component that separates a good offer from a life-changing one. We're talking about equity, stock. This is your ownership stake in the company you are helping to build. In the world of tech, this primarily comes in the form of restricted stock units or RSUs. Forget everything you think you know about old-school stock options. RSUs are simpler and far more common at established tech companies. Here's how they work. The company grants you a certain dollar amount of stock, let's say $100,000. This stock is then subject to a vesting schedule, which is typically 4 years with a 1-year cliff. This is the most important part to understand. The 1-year cliff means if you leave the company before your first anniversary, you get absolutely nothing. Zero. It's a loyalty test. But the second you cross that 1-year mark, the cliff happens and 25% of your grant, $25,000 worth of stock vests, becomes yours. You can sell it, hold it, do whatever you want. After that, the remaining 75% typically vests on a quarterly or monthly basis for the next 3 years. This is how tech companies keep you. They're not just paying you a salary, they're making you an owner, and they're giving you that ownership piece by piece over time. These are the golden handcuffs, and this is massively negotiable. If they can't move on salary, you can ask for more equity, saying, "Could we increase the initial RSU grant from $100,000 to $120,000 over 4 years?" Is a perfectly reasonable request. That's an extra $5,000 per year in your pocket, assuming the stock price stays flat. But in a growing tech company, it doesn't stay flat. If that stock doubles over your 4 years, that extra $20,000 grant is suddenly worth $40,000. This is how real wealth is built in this industry. It's not from saving a portion of your salary. It's from the appreciation of your equity. So let's put this all together and see why the headline salary number is so misleading. Imagine you have 2 offers. Company A offers you a base salary of $160,000. That's it. No bonus, no stock. Feels high, right? Company B offers you $145,000 base salary. That feels lower. But they also offer a 15% target bonus and a $120,000 RSU grant vesting over 4 years. The amateur looks at these 2 offers and sees 160 versus 145. They take the higher base salary every time. The professional does the math. Company A's total compensation is simple: $160,000 per year. Company B's total compensation in the first year is $145,000 in base salary, plus a target bonus of 15% of that base, which is $21,750, plus the annual value of the RSU grant, which is $120,000 divided by 4 years, so $30,000 per year. Add it all up. 145 plus 21,750 plus 30. That's a first-year total compensation of $196,750. That's nearly $37,000 more than Company A. You would be leaving a massive amount of money on the table by just looking at the base salary. You have to shift your mindset from, "What is my salary?" to "What is my total compensation?" And we haven't even touched on the other levers you can pull. Things that have real, tangible value. Can you negotiate for a fully remote position? The money you save on gas, car maintenance, lunches, and dry cleaning adds up to thousands of dollars a year. Not to mention the hours you get back in your day. That's value. Can you ask for a professional development budget? A $5,000 annual stipend for certifications, conferences, and training. That's the company paying for you to increase your own market value. That's value. Can you ask for an extra week of paid time off? What is a week of your life worth? That is immense value. This is the real game. It's a multivariable equation, and your job is to optimize for the entire package, not just one number. You need to look at the offer holistically: base, bonus, equity, benefits, and perks, and understand how they all fit together. Because the difference between a good cloud engineer and a great one isn't just their technical skill. It's their ability to understand their own value and negotiate a compensation package that truly reflects it. You've got the offer, you understand the components, and you've negotiated the numbers up. You're holding a great offer from Company A and an incredible offer from Company B. But Company A is a stable, well-known enterprise in a low cost of living city, and Company B is a high-growth startup in an expensive tech hub like San Francisco or New York. How do you even begin to compare them? The numbers on the page are only half the story. The other half is about where that money actually goes. Let's break this down because this is where most people get it completely wrong. They see a $50,000 difference and their eyes glaze over. They start mentally spending the extra money before they've even signed the offer letter. But that 50 grand is an illusion. It's a mirage in the desert of compensation negotiation. To see the truth, you have to dissect it piece by piece. Let's put some real numbers on it. Offer A. A solid, respectable $150,000 a year from Company A in Austin, Texas. Offer B. A dazzling $200,000 a year from Company B, that hot startup in San Francisco. A $50,000 win for San Francisco. Easy decision, right? Not so fast. Let's start with the biggest expense in anyone's budget. Housing. In Austin, a decent one-bedroom apartment in a desirable neighborhood might run you about $2,000 a month. In San Francisco, that same decent one-bedroom apartment? You're lucky if you find it for $3,500. That's a $1,500 difference every single month. Over a year, that's $18,000. Suddenly, that $50,000 advantage for San Francisco has shrunk to $32,000. Still a big number, but the illusion is starting to flicker. Now for the silent killer of high salaries, state income tax. Texas famously has no state income tax. That $150,000 is only subject to federal taxes. But California? California has the highest state income tax rates in the entire country. On a $200,000 salary after deductions and credits, you can conservatively expect to pay around 9% of that to the state of California. That's another $18,000, vanished into the state treasury. So let's recap. We started with a $50,000 advantage for the San Francisco job. We subtract $18,000 for the higher cost of rent. We subtract another $18,000 for California state income tax. That's $36,000 gone. Your $50,000 raise is now just a $14,000 raise. And we haven't even left the apartment yet. This is what I call financial death by 1,000 cuts. It's not the one big expense that gets you. It's the relentless onslaught of smaller, inflated costs that bleed you dry. Let's go grocery shopping. The exact same basket of groceries, milk, eggs, chicken, vegetables, will cost you 10 to 20% more in San Francisco than in Austin. That's maybe an extra $100–150 a month. Another $1,800 a year. Our $14,000 advantage is now down to just over $12,000. Need to fill up your car? Gas is consistently $1.50, sometimes $2 more per gallon in the Bay Area. Let's say you use a tank a week. That's another $80 to $100 a month, another $1,000 a year. We're down to $11,000. How about a night out? A simple dinner for two with a drink each that might cost you $80 in Austin can easily be $150 in San Francisco. Do that twice a month and you've spent an extra $1,700 over the course of a year. Our advantage is now below $10,000. A beer at a bar, a cup of coffee, car insurance, utilities, every single transaction has a Bay Area tax baked into it. By the time you add it all up, that initial life-changing $50,000 difference has been whittled down to maybe $5,000 or $6,000 of actual spendable disposable income. Suddenly the choice isn't so clear, is it? For the price of a used car, you're choosing to live in a smaller apartment in a more crowded city with higher stress levels. The numbers, when you actually do the math, make the Austin offer look incredibly compelling. But this is the point where the analysis has to go beyond the spreadsheet. Because if the money is a near tie, you have to start pricing the priceless. You have to evaluate the non-monetary assets of each offer. And this is where your career trajectory is truly forged. That San Francisco startup, Company B? It's located in the epicenter of the tech universe. The person you sit next to at a coffee shop could be the founder of the next unicorn. The meetup you attend on a Tuesday night could have a principal engineer from Google or Netflix giving a talk. The venture capitalists, the kingmakers, the people who write the checks that create empires, they are all there. Working in that environment for just 2 or 3 years can be the equivalent of a decade of experience somewhere else. It's a career accelerator. The network you build, the high-stakes projects you work on, the sheer velocity of the ecosystem, that has a value that is impossible to quantify but could be worth millions in the long run. Then there's the company itself. A high-growth startup is a trial by fire. You'll be pushed to your limits. You'll work long hours. You'll be forced to learn new technologies on the fly, to solve problems that have no textbook answer. Can be brutal. Can lead to burnout. But if you survive, you emerge a different kind of engineer. A more resilient, more resourceful, more valuable engineer. Now look at Company A in Austin. It might be a more established, stable company. Better work-life balance. Less stress. You get to leave work at 5, have a backyard, enjoy the live music scene, and have a life outside of your job. That has immense value, especially for your mental and physical health. The career growth might be slower, more linear, but it's predictable and safe. And what about the ultimate X factor? The golden ticket. Equity. The Austin company might offer a reliable $10,000 annual bonus. You can count on it, you can budget for it. The San Francisco startup is offering you stock options. Right now, they're just numbers on a piece of paper. They're functionally worthless. 90% of startups fail, and if they do, that paper is worth less than a lottery ticket. But if, and it's a massive if that startup is the 1 in 10 that succeeds, that gets acquired or has a massive IPO, those worthless stock options could be worth more than a decade of your salary combined. It's a low probability, high impact bet. So you see, the question is not which job pays more. The real question is, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for your present or your future? Are you optimizing for comfort and stability, or for risk and exponential growth? The Austin offer gives you a better life today. The San Francisco offer gives you a chance at a dramatically different life tomorrow. One is a safe investment in a blue-chip stock. The other is a high-risk bet on a volatile crypto coin that could either go to the moon or go to zero. The choice isn't between 150,000 and 200,000. It's a choice between two completely different paths, two entirely different futures. And how you navigate that final decision, how you negotiate the offer based on this understanding, will define not just your bank account, but the entire arc of your career. Because there's one final piece of this puzzle, the one lever you can pull that changes the entire equation, and it's the one most engineers are too afraid to even touch. It's the single most profitable 10-minute conversation you will ever have in your entire life: salary negotiation. And the reason most engineers are afraid to touch it is because we've been conditioned to see it as a confrontation, as greedy, as asking for something we don't deserve. That is a lie. A very, very expensive lie. Salary negotiation is not a conflict. It is a business transaction. The company is trying to acquire a valuable asset, your skills, your time, your problem-solving ability, for the lowest reasonable price. Your job is to ensure they acquire that asset for a price that reflects its true market value. That's it. It's not personal. It's just business. And by staying silent, you are leaving an astronomical amount of money on the table over the course of your career. Let's do some quick, brutal math. Imagine you get an offer for a cloud engineer role at $150,000. You're thrilled. You're about to accept it on the spot. But instead you pause. You do your research, you build your case, and you have that slightly uncomfortable conversation. And you successfully negotiate an extra $10,000, bumping your starting salary to $160,000. You might think, okay, that's 10 grand. That's great. You are thinking too small. That's not $10,000. Let's assume a conservative 4% raise each year for the next 30 years. That initial $10,000 bump doesn't just disappear. It becomes the new baseline. Every future raise is calculated on top of that higher number. Over a 30-year career, that single 10-minute conversation where you ask for $10,000 more will have netted you over $560,000 in direct salary alone. But wait, it gets crazier. Let's say you invest that extra post-tax income every year. Assuming a modest 7% annual return in the stock market, that initial $10,000 negotiation, compounded over 30 years, would be worth nearly $1 million. Let me say that again. A single conversation could be the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring a millionaire. This is the lever. This is the cheat code. Your technical skills get you the offer. Your negotiation skills determine your financial destiny. So how do you do it? How do you pull this lever without breaking it? First, you must understand the golden rule. He who speaks first loses. The recruiter will almost always ask you, so what are your salary expectations? This is a trap. It is the single most important question in the entire process, and they are hoping you'll answer it poorly. If you say a number that's too low, you've just left a pile of cash on the table. They will happily agree to it, and you'll never know you could have made $20,000 more. If you say a number that's too high, you might price yourself out of the running before you've even had a chance to prove your value. So you deflect. Gracefully. You say something like, I'm really focused on finding the role that's the best long-term fit for my skills. I'm confident that if this is the right role, we'll be able to agree on a compensation package that's fair and competitive. Could you tell me what the approved salary band is for this position? You've just turned the tables. You've put the onus on them to reveal the range they're working with. 9 times out of 10, they will give you the range. Now the negotiation is happening within their budget, not some random number you pulled out of thin air. Second, you anchor high. Once you know their range, let's say they tell you it's between 140 and 170, you never aim for the middle. You have to justify why you belong at the top of that band, or even slightly above it. This is where all your hard work comes into play. This is your closing argument. You don't just say, "I want 170,000. You say, "Thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful." Based on the market data for an engineer with a professional level AWS certification and demonstrated experience in Terraform and Kubernetes automation, which we discussed would be critical for the new platform build-out, I'd be looking for a number at the top end of that range, around 170. You see the difference? You didn't just state a desire. You presented a business case. You connected your specific, high-value skills directly to their business needs. You're not a charity case. You are an investment with a clear return. Third, prepare for the pushback. They might say, "That's really the absolute top of our budget." Or, "We'd love to, but we have to keep things fair for the existing team." This is standard. Don't panic. This is where you expand the battlefield beyond just the base salary. You can respond with, "I completely understand the budget constraints. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and I want to make it work. Since there isn't much flexibility on the base salary, perhaps we could explore other areas of the compensation package? A sign-on bonus, for instance, could help bridge that gap. Or we could discuss the equity portion of the offer." Suddenly, you're not just talking about one number. You're talking about the total compensation package. A one-time sign-on bonus is often paid from a different budget and is much easier for a manager to get approved. More restricted stock units, or RSUs, can dramatically increase your total earnings. An annual performance bonus target can be negotiated from 10% to 15%. A stipend for home office setup or professional development. These are all negotiable levers. A $10,000 sign-on bonus is still $10,000 in your pocket. And the ultimate source of leverage? A competing offer. Having another company validate your market worth is like walking into the negotiation with a royal flush. You don't have to be aggressive about it. You can simply state the facts. "I have to be transparent with you. I do have another offer on the table. However, I'm most excited about the work your team is doing, and I would much prefer to come here. If you could get your offer to match the total compensation of X, I would be ready to sign today." This creates urgency and a clear path for them to win. They now have a specific target and a reason to fight for you internally. All the things we've talked about, the location you choose, the certifications you earn, the specializations you master in things like security or FinOps, they are all just pieces of ammunition. They are the evidence you collect to build an undeniable case for your value. But that evidence is useless if you don't present it to the court. The negotiation is your courtroom. It's where you advocate for yourself. Your career is the single biggest financial asset you will ever build. It will outperform any stock you pick or any house you buy. And yet, most people just accept the default settings. They take the first offer, they stay quiet, and they hope for a standard 3% raise every year. That is not the path to wealth. That is not how you take control of your future. You are an engineer. You design, build, and optimize complex systems for a living. It's time to apply that same thinking to your career. Look at the data. Identify the levers. Run the experiments. Optimize for the outcome you want. The numbers we've discussed are not fantasy. They are the reality for cloud engineers who understand their worth and are not afraid to ask for it. Whether you end up making $100,000 or $300,000 a year doesn't just come down to your code. It comes down to your courage. The courage to bet on yourself, to have that uncomfortable conversation, and to respectfully demand to be paid what you are worth. Don't just build the cloud. Build your future. Go out there and configure your own success.